Okay. I want to start with giving a huge mazel tov to Yitti and her husband and Rabbi and Rebbetzin Wolf on the birth of a grandson, child. So huge. So huge mazel tov. That's why Mrs. Wolf's not here. So we are drawing to a close. We're drawing to a close of this section of the Tanya and to the Tanya itself. We're on chapter 50. And something that I thought was really interesting, and I kind of like seeing this because I like seeing an overview of the Tanya. I like seeing how I don't want to get lost, in the forest with the trees instead of seeing the forest. So Rabbi Paltiel divides the Tanya into 5 sections. One time he had like this kind of like a challenge to teach Tanya in 5 lessons. So you have to like really condensify it and also kind of categorize what these chapters are talking about and these chapters are talking about. So the way he categorized it, and lots of people categorize in different ways, is that the first part of of Tanya is what is a person, and we went through that already. And then the struggles of being human, of being a person, and after that, the inner potential of a person, the neshama of a person, and what that means. And right now, we've been in the 4th category, 4th part of the Tanya, which is Lamed Chastu Nun, which is our motivations for serving Hashem. And we've been discussing at length Ava and Yira being the motivation, the passion that should fuel our Avodas Hashem. And lastly, we're going to get to this, God willing, next week, purpose of a person. So what we've been talking about all around, and I've been summarizing it every single time, is the concept of mitzvah b'lei kavana kaguf b'li neshama. So there's 2 important aspects of Avodas Hashem. There's the act, there is the action, there is the doing, which is so important that we should just do it, right? Literally, Nike, just do it. Just do the action, and that is what is important. I feel like I'm walking advertisement today with my hat. Nike, what were we doing last week? We were talking about Basi Cohen's husband's business. Just putting it out there. Just give me a mic. I got you covered. Point being that if you don't have passion, if you don't have energy, suffusing that act, then it's like a body without a neshama. It doesn't have the life inside of it that will sustain it, that will keep it and make it fly up to the Eibishter. It's important to do. Again, we need both. But what we've been talking about is the passion and how to generate that passion. And a story we've been telling throughout, because it's a really great story that illustrates this duality of how we're supposed to be conquering or how we're supposed to be approaching our Avodas Hashem, is a story about the Sfas Emes, Ger Rebbe, who at a very young age took over his father, the previous of Ger Rebbe. And like always, when someone takes over, especially at such a young age, especially if he kind of was a child and just received the role because of dynasty, there were some older Hasidim that weren't so excited about how he started changing things and making new rules. And so the Sfas Emes gathers all of his Hasidim and he shares with them the story that we've spoken about before, which was a story of a man who trains for years and years to become an incredible mountain climber. And he finally conquers this incredible mountain, and it's a climb like no other. And he comes to the top, and he's literally climbing solo because nobody else could do this. And he gets to the top, and who does he see but a child playing around on the top of the mountain? And he's so startled, he just can't believe his eyes. He walks over to the child and says, "How did you get here?" Right? I've been working for years, developed techniques, how to breathe properly so I could conserve oxygen, how I could conserve energy, how I could measure out my ounces precisely to how much I can carry. Recently, my brother sent me a video about someone who climbed Mount Everest and then skied down. So he's the first person to ever not climb Mount Everest. Obviously, we know that's been done, but to ski down is interesting. So just thinking about it, that added a lot of ounces to how much he was climbing with. And just like, it's also maneuverability. It's just so annoying. And in order to ski down, it also meant that he didn't do it with oxygen. So he went all the way up to the top without oxygen. I don't think many people have done that. It might have been done before, but not many people have done that. And he also went down without oxygen. So you have to learn how to breathe a certain way, right? He's worked at this. He's trained for years, and this is the highlight. He gets to the top, and the child says, "I didn't train for this. I was born here. Right? I was born into this. This is my privilege. I was born here." So the Sfas Emes's message to these Hasidim, these disgruntled Hasidim, was very clear. And after that, they backed off and they let him be. But the mashal is an important mashal for us to hear. Why? Because it's this dichotomy that the Alter Rebbe has been talking about throughout. He's been saying, on the one hand, you have to work, and your avodah is toil, it is work. You have to get there, and you have to try. You have to consider Hashem. You have to awaken awareness of God. You have to contemplate on Him, and all of that is you developing yourself to come to this place where you can now have a connection with the Eibishter. And at the same time, the Alter Rebbe is saying is, you were born here. You have an intrinsic connection to God. You have an infinite connection with God. It never disappears. It never dissipates. You can't add on to it. You can't distract from it. It is. You were born here. You're born on the top of the mountain. So this dichotomy is a very interesting dichotomy, and it's important for us to talk about because chapter 50 is going to now say that there's another way. There's another route. There's something else you haven't considered. Okay? So before we've talked about developing, working really hard to make sure you have a certain love and yira, making sure that you develop your avodah. And the other piece, the other aspect is that it's natural to you. It's your birthright. It's what you were born into. You have this. This is yours. We need both, right? We need both to be in existence. We need both, and we need to find the balance. And the Alter Rebbe has been talking about that with us throughout. So many times throughout the Tanya, we've said, like, work hard, and if you can't, it's okay, because you still have it, right? Or like, maybe that's the tzaddik's avodah, but your avodah is the struggle. So just keep on struggling, because that's the point, and it's okay. Now let's talk about both of these loves. Let's talk about both of these avodas. On the one hand, the avodah that you work really hard at is amazing. Why? Because it's personal. You've invested effort. It's important to you. And at the same time, that advantage of how personal it is and how much investment there is also its disadvantage, because it's limited. It's based on your effort. It's based on your understanding. It's based on how much you put in. That's how much you will get out. So it very much has its limitations. Now, on the other hand, you'd think that that natural love, that where you were born into it, where you don't have to be a mountain climber, but you were born on top of the mountain, doesn't have any disadvantages, right? Like, it's amazing. You're born there. But its disadvantage is the fact that it is natural. Its disadvantage is the fact that you don't really appreciate it, or you don't really access it, because you were born with it. It's usual to you. This is how much oxygen you're used to. Being up in the Alps or in the Himalayas is something that it's just part of your reality. So it's not something that you've made personal. It's not something that you've endeavored to achieve. It just is. So oftentimes, more often than not, you either lean on it, whether it's like a lazy thing, you just lean on it because it's innate and you have it, or you don't even know that it's there. You're just not aware to it because you don't even know that things could be different. So it also has a limitation, right? So both of these avodas, in a way, have their own limitation. They're both really important. It's important to endeavor both, right? To access both. But in ways, both of them have their limitations. What's a good example for this? So what's a natural love that we all know, that we could all, I guess, access or understand, is a familiar love, right? So imagine sisters, brothers, parents. It's an experience that you love because you just do, right? You're attached to them. You were born into it. You have the same genes. Your genetic makeup is the same. So therefore, whether it's nature or nurture, there's so much that you have in common that you just end up loving that person. And the disadvantage is that because it's there always and because you didn't have to work hard at it, you could also, it's like a love-hate relationship, right? So the famous example is like, you could, I could be beating up my brother, but if you start messing around with him, you have to mess around with me. And the idea is like, if you really loved him, why would you be messing, why would you be fighting with him? But that's because it's the disadvantage. You haven't worked hard at it. It's a natural love. It's only when it's challenged do you access it, do you see it, do you realize that it's actually there. As opposed to a different kind of friendship, which is the friends or the loves that you have in your life that you have chosen, right? So like, let's say friends, you have chosen to love that person. You have chosen to invest in them. And you see how there are maybe, yes, similar common interests, but you've invested effort to keep those interests alive or the relationship alive. And that has its limitations too, right? Because it's not like blood, right? So if some sort of fight happens or some sort of misunderstanding happens, you're like, fine, who cares? I'll find other friends, right? Or the effort or how close you feel in the relationship is only based on how much effort you put into the relationship. That's what it will be, right? Both of them have their limitations. Chapter 50 is going to introduce something novel. It's going to say that up until now, we thought that our love towards Hashem either has to be innate, right? That infinite, innate love, or a developed, worked on love that you just have to like contemplate on. Like, right? So if I contemplate on Hashem enough, or I experience enough gratitude around him, or if I think about how much investments he's put into this world, and I see enough Hashgacha Pratis, and I understand him a little bit better, then I'll have feelings, right? Again, based on your understanding and based on those feelings actually being born. Chapter 50 says, we're going to introduce a different kind of love. The love we've been talking about up until now is a love like water, a love where you feel drawn, right? So just like water or liquid, I guess, when you pour it into a cup, it kind of like sticks together. It has like sticky properties and it looks like it's going to overflow, but it doesn't because it just wants to stick together. So love has this like being drawn to one another. It sticks to each other. Here we're going to talk a little bit about a different kind of love. What is this love? This love is a fiery love. What is fire like? Fire doesn't stick together. Fire destroys. Fire breaks apart. Fire wants to separate. Fire wants to go. That kind of fire is a different kind of love. And what kind of love is that? It's not a love that's developed. It's a love that is willed. It is love that is willed into existence. Okay? So it's not a love that is based on contemplation or like understanding and limitation. It's a willed love that still can get to an infinite place. Okay? So here the Alter Rebbe is saying, you thought that both of those loves, the natural love and the developed love, are both limited, which they are. Here's a different way of approaching love, of approaching motivation in your Avodas Hashem. And this kind of motivation, this kind of love can be willed into existence, and it could get to such a degree that it reaches infinite, that it's not limited like the others are. Okay? And I know this feels a little bit remote, and it feels like that. I don't know if that's achievable by me. Again, we're talking about a very high level, but let's try to understand, right? What does that actually mean? What are some examples of that? What's the subsequent feeling? Okay. To give it words that may be language that maybe you've heard before, it's the concept of klais hanefesh. What's klais hanefesh? Where there's just a loss of desire to live, right? So when it's coming from a place of ratzon, of will, where I am willing, I want to love Hashem so much. I don't feel it. I want to feel the love. I don't feel it, but I want it. And I want it so much. It's coming from a place higher than intellect. It's coming from a place beyond me. And it's looking at a thing beyond me, looking at God who's so unreachable, like unrelatable to me. But I so want to love him. So because of that deep desire, I'm accessing something that is beyond. And that access to something beyond can take me up with it. can take up my physical and my desire to be alive and my ego, and basically completely take over all of that, and almost like a factory reset of the entire being, right? So technically, a person wants to stay alive and they very much care about themselves. And even if, modern psychologists say today that we don't have enough self esteem and we don't care about ourselves enough, push comes to shove, we definitely care and we'll do as much as we can to make sure that we are comfortable, right? Unless chas v'shalom, there's mental illness or anything like that. Most people will take the route that is easiest and most comfortable and self-serving. Not in a bad way. It's just a natural experience. Here we're talking about someone achieving or working towards achieving this level of desire where they want to love Hashem, and having worked at wanting so much that they've accessed this will that is beyond their will now to live or to stay alive or to take care of themselves. And their will is no longer their own will. It's been subsumed by this will to love Hashem. That's all that matters. There's a new will, and that will is God. It's only God oriented. It's about Him, and it's not about me. So they've transformed like this factory reset of my nefesh Bahamas or what I want or self preservation, and instead they've gotten to this place of I want beyond, and I'm so focused on beyond that this doesn't matter anymore. Okay, now this is not something that we actually want to achieve, Klais HaNefesh itself, because Klais HaNefesh literally means that I want so much that my neshama is coming out of my body. And the most famous example of that is Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's two children, who came to a place that they so desired to connect to Hashem, and they were so overwhelmed in their service of the Eibishter that their neshamas literally left their bodies. Right? And that, of course, is not what the Avaida is. These are the examples of what not to do, not what to do. There's, what'd you say? Right. So Mesiras Nefesh is a little bit different. This is Klais HaNefesh because we're talking about Avodas Hashem. But here's the story. So the story goes that Rabbi Akiva in the Gemara is in jail, being persecuted, and his Chassidim. I always love these stories where the Rebbe is like dying, he's being burnt, something awful is happening to him, and his Chassidim are around, and they're like, Rebbe, talk to us. And it's just like amazing, and it's all like I just think that the stories are so. I can't imagine just being in that situation, but there's something so amazing about it because look how often those stories happen, and we recount those stories again and again because the messages were so timeless and were so so important for us to live by. So the Chassidim ask him, and they're saying, how can this happen to you? How can you, the leader of our generation, the breath and life of our people, how can you be in dungeon and your life is completely in danger? And Rabbi Akiva responds, he says, all my life I've been struggling with the concept of Mesiras Nefesh. How can I give up my life for Hashem? How can I give up my life for Torah? Now that the opportunity is here, how can I give up this opportunity? Right? Coming from a completely different place. Someone who deeply, deeply cared about Eibishter. And indeed, that's what happened. His life was taken. And he died on Mesiras Nefesh. But what's interesting is that Chassidus even says, and it's like a funny thing also to think about, where a little bit there was like a desire of his to give up his life for Hashem. So it wasn't like perfectly Ratzon involved. It wasn't perfect like Ratzon only about Hashem. It was, I really want to fulfill this mitzvah. Say it again. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely a possibility to have Mesiras Nefesh for sure. Here we're talking specifically about Avaida and in context to your desire being being swallowed up by the desire of Hashem and the desire for Hashem. Okay, right, right. So let's get practical in a minute. Hi, welcome. So what are we talking about? We're talking about someone who takes it very seriously, their love towards the Abishter, right? I just want to get practical for a moment. Um, I mean, the stories that we know are also of like great people. Remember that story we were talking about Itcha Damasmet, who was such an incredible person. And one time he was coming home from a Farbrengen and he's muttering to himself, and the Bachrim who were escorting him home were like trying to listen into what he was saying, and he was already a little bit drunk, and they hear him saying "Ich hab dir lieb, ich hab dir lieb," and they say, who do you love? Why are you so who are you giving your heart to? Who do you love? And he says, I love the Abishter. I love Hashem. We're like, what's the question even? I love Hashem. Right? So this is a person who his truth comes out after he's drunk. What's his absolute truth is all he wants, all he cares about. His entire life is subsumed with, I love Hashem. Was that something that was natural? Was that something that he developed? I don't know. Was it something he willed into existence? We don't know. But chapter 50 speaks about that will that you could develop, you want to want. And that want to want can lead to an infinite love for Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe connects this to the concept of who the Levium were. The Alter Rebbe links it to Levium versus Kohanim. Kohanim are the ones who were all about love. We saw with Aaron. Aaron was all about Avos Hashem. He was all about this absolute love for the Eibishter. The Levium had a little bit more Gevura. And you could see that also throughout the Levium's story in Yetzias Mitzrayim and later in the Midbar. They always were like somewhat removed, right? So they weren't part of the Shibud. They weren't part of the slavery. They did not get involved there. Even in the desert, they were not the same as the other Yidden. They removed themselves in a way. They didn't get involved sometimes in the complaining. They also continued giving their families brisim, whereas the rest of Bnei Yisrael stopped giving brises throughout the 40 years because it was too dangerous to give a bris. The Levium had this like gevura, like this will. And it's interesting to note that that will and that part of being a Levi is what we're talking about here in chapter 50, that it takes a certain element of like gevura, right? So that restraint, that space, that I'm here, but you're there, and I'm going to let myself go and make space for Hashem to come in here. And even if I don't have a natural love, I'm going to develop this infinite connection with Hashem through will instead of through the Ava. And it's an Ava of fire, which is the same thing as this will, as opposed to this Ava of water. Now, here's where it gets a little bit confusing, right? Because we don't want Klais and Navish. We don't want to end up like Nadav and Avihu. The whole point is not to just lose ourselves, because if we deeply will to be connected to the Eibishter, if I'm trying with every ounce of my being to want, and I want to achieve this infinite connection with him, then ultimately, when I'm connected, I should care about what he wants. And what he wants is to be down here, right? So what that concept of klais and nefesh, of just like I'm losing myself, I'm losing my will, I'm losing my ability to stay grounded in this world because I just want to be together with Hashem. That's a concept that we talk about in Chassidus called rotzoi. Rotzoi is that running away, where it's like all inspiring, it's all infusing. You're just running towards the Eibishter. You're so swept up in it. And the kind of like the sister term to Ratzai is the concept of shuv. Shuv means to settle, to sit, to come back. So there's even like a category of nigunim called Ratzah and Shuv, where there's this nigun that's bringing you up and you should feel so uplifted, you should feel so inspired. And then the other part of the nigun is this Shuv aspect where you have to come down, you have to ground yourself, you have to be here in this world because of what Hashem wants. And if you really were connected to him, and if you really cared about what he wants and his will, it would be to fulfill Torah and mitzvahs here and bring him with you here. So the real avodah is not the ratzoi. The real avodah is not to develop this infinite love towards him that you could get lost in. The real avodah is to develop this infinite love and get connected to him, and then to really be consumed by his will, which is shuv, to come back into this world and to serve him from that place, from that space. So if I'm going to be a religious Jew, it means I need to love him. I need to have some sort of connection to him. I need to have some sort of passionate relationship with God. If I love him, then that means that I'm doing what he wants. What he wants is important to me, right? That connection means his will is my will. It's important to me. And his will is this world, not to be lofty and beyond, but to be grounded and here and present with fulfilling his will. And Chazal say, against your will you shall live, and against your will you shall die. And it feels like a very funny Chazal. Like, what does that mean? How am I supposed to fulfill that? They seem to be in contradiction to one another. Against my will I shall live, against my will I shall die. And that's kind of explaining this concept. Against my will I shall live, because my real will, part of my will, is I just want to go up to the Eibishter and get lost in him. Right? But no, I have to not get lost in him. I have to actually, against my will, live, but fulfill my purpose, which is what he wants from me. And that is Bacharta B'Chayim. That is choosing life, choosing real life, choosing what the Eibishter wants, and his will being your life. And on the one hand, this feels a little bit remote. Like, how is this even accessible? How is this something that I can live with on a day-to-day basis? But I think if we kind of break it down into accessible bites, I think it is possible to understand this. Many of us have experienced the concept of getting inspired, right? So I feel inspired, it feels good, and I want to do something for Hashem, and I could get lost in it. I get really passionate about something, and I get really excited about it. And it's hard. I don't know if you've had this ever, but like, I've definitely had good ideas. And then someone says like, okay, slow down, hold your horses. Like, let's come back to earth here a little bit. And that's not fun. It's not really so fun to hear that, right? It could kind of quell the enthusiasm. And the idea is that both are so important. You have to have that excitement. You have to have that inspiration, dreams of the future, what I could do to make a difference. Those are really important. And at the same time, it has to be grounded. You can't stay one without the other. You can't always be realistic and grounded, because you don't have the inspiration and the will of Hashem infusing that with purpose. And you can't just have the will, and you can't just have the inspiration and getting lost in Hashem, because nothing will ever come of it. And then it's not really oriented around God, but oriented around yourself. So this Ratzai Shuv experience is something that we could access, maybe in small measures, but it is still something that we could think about and access. And what does that look like for each person is different, is difficult, right? It's something that is unique to each person. However, this is the reason why the Rebbe used to finish off every single sicha with the takeaway, right? What's the concept of a takeaway? As a coach, I'm always discussing takeaways, because we could talk for an hour and I could give you a lot of shifts in perspective, but if you're not going to walk out of this session with anything, then what have we been doing here? You could shift your perspective, and if you stay with that perspective, great. But how are you going to ground that new perspective? How are you going to take action and affirm and assert that this is your new way of seeing the world, or of behaving, or of interacting with other people? So as much as sometimes people resist or have a bad taste in their mouth of like, I have to take something else on, that's not the point. The point is just to be grounded in your inspiration, because both are so important. And if you're only thinking about what my takeaway is, then you're also forgetting about the inspiration. You're also forgetting about your vision and the connection to God and all the rotzoi that is supposed to be coming before the groundedness. So both are crucial, and they can't be one without the other. So to make this very practical, I think it would be important to bring it down to something that is accessible to each person. So whether it's I need to bring more inspiration into my life because I'm feeling like that rutzoi is missing, or whether it's, yes, I have so much inspiration in my life and I do feel like I go to so many classes, but it's not really changing me somehow. And again, I'll just put this as a note. Sometimes the change is happening internally, and that's change, right? That's shuv. It doesn't have to be that now you walk out of a Torah class and you're lighting Shabbos candles 5 minutes early and you're never going to say Lashon Hara ever again, right? It doesn't have to translate into very practical and non-negotiable things. Sometimes the transformation is happening inside, and that's beautiful and that's grounded. But there has to be something, right? So for us to look forward and to say, or to look backward, or to look internal and say, do I have enough inspiration? Is there enough ratzoi in my life? Am I bringing enough content to myself, or involving myself with enough content, or even thinking about Hashem enough that I have will to connect with Him? And if I don't, what are the things that are stopping me? Right? So if there are distractions, what are those distractions that are not allowing me to just focus in on what I really want in my life? Then I need to get rid of some of those things. And you know what? Sometimes it could literally be religion, right? Sometimes you're so focused on the rote and making sure that everything is perfect and fulfilling exactly what Hashem said, that you're losing the delight and inspiration in being connected to the Eibishter and having an neshama. And sometimes it means stepping a little bit away from that. I'm not saying chas v'shalom to stop doing Torah mitzvahs, but I'm saying maybe the obsession or the intensity is being directed to a place where it's not actually letting you experience the rasoy and shuv. And instead it's just being like what we were saying before, kaguf b'li neshama. So it takes a little bit of contemplation and maybe introspection to think where is there lack of ratzoi, and how could I make that ratzoi alive and feel inspiring and feel connecting to me? And where is there a lack of shuv? And what would that look like for me personally? Everyone has their own shuv. And I just want to give everybody a bracha that they should feel like Chapter 50 is not unrelatable. It's not just Itcha Demasmid. It's not just Nadav View. It's not people beyond me who can experience this level of wanting to want. We all can want to connect to the Eibishter. It just might mean removing some distractions, or even just thinking about it for a minute and stepping into that creative process instead of that preserving process. So we should all take Chapter 50 to heart, and God willing, we have a few more chapters left, and we're going to have hopefully a siyum, and we'll have finished Tanya, and we'll start again. Looking forward. Yeah, so exciting.